Well, for more, we can cross live now to journalist and author Gearo O Colma. Gearo, nice to have you in the programme once again. As you may have just heard there, the town's mayor has repeatedly asked for the army to be deployed to the city. Paris is resisting that. How do those calls look in the light of these events today?
Well, calling the military is inevitable because you're going to have increasing chaos, and there's now the situation is getting out of control. So whenever there is a problem in France nowadays, the military are called. We've already got a lot of military on the streets, and so you're seeing an increasing militarization of French society. This is another excuse to reinforce that and to intensify that. I think we need to look at the migration crisis in its global context. I think there are a few points that are constantly overlooked in this migration crisis. The first point I think that's important to make is that countries in the southern hemisphere of the planet for the last 50 years have been subject to neo-colonial regimes. The French are deeply involved in the pillaging and the support of terrorist gangs all over Africa. They've been destabilizing African countries for decades. They euphemistically refer to their policy in Africa as La France Afrique. But it is a neo-colonial policy that consists in overthrowing African governments and replacing them with dictatorships. The last major operation, of course, was Libya, but they also destroyed Côte d'Ivoire. They've been deeply involved in destroying the Central African Republic. And at the same time, you have a population explosion in these countries. What Gunnar Heimsohn, who's the German sociologist who wrote a book about this 10 years ago, I think it was 10 years ago, I think it was 2006, he published a major book on this. And he said that there was a major population explosion in the global south, and that these people, many of these young men who are unable to find work in their own countries, would move north. Now, planners, US military planners, have known this for a long time, that the actual demographics would entice a lot of youths, particularly young men, to go north for work. At the same time, you see population deficit in countries like Germany. It's huge population deficit all over Europe, Italy, of course, as well. So these are sort of the contradictions of globalization which are driving this. Okay, so you have, first of all, the destruction of the global South economies after independence. All of those, the entire first generation of African leaders after independence were practically assassinated by the French Secret Service. So that's something that people don't learn in school in France. They never learn about people like Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
If we had leaders like that in power in Africa, people wouldn't need to immigrate. So that's the first thing. The second point is that you have a US geopolitical strategy in Europe to destabilize Europe.
Gary, we might have time just to move on to that, but can we just speak about what we're actually seeing on the ground on a micro level here today? Because the situation in Calais has recently been growing more violent. We have seen clashes erupting on several occasions, journalists being attacked, including an RT journalist, in fact, this week, who was there. How is the situation there going to develop in the port of Calais, do you believe?
Well, I think that, again, Port of Calais is a symptom of what I've been talking about. I should just make the last point I was going to make, which is that you have oligarchs like George Soros who are driving this weaponization of refugees. So that's the background. In terms of Calais, I think it's going to get worse because we're expecting millions more of refugees to arrive. They're not necessarily refugees, of course. This is a population explosion, and there is a destabilization, U.S. destabilization of Europe agenda behind this as well. So you will probably see the rise of very reactionary political parties, because parties like Marine Le Pen, what they will generally do is blame the immigrants. It's not the immigrants who are at fault here. It generally is much more macro globalization structures, financial elites, for example, who want to destroy the nation state. These are the issues that need to be discussed and are never discussed in this debate. And it will get worse because as long as people describe those who are actually doing an investigation of this as kind of fascist and racist and so on, we're not going to get anywhere. And it's a very serious issue. I think Calais is a symptom of a much wider European problem, and that is it's an attempt to destroy the nation state and to create conditions of civil war right throughout Europe.
We've been speaking to Arthur Gearo, O Colma. We're unfortunately running out of time this hour. Thank you for coming on the programme, Gearo.
You're welcome.